Participation. I know that many of you think, well, modern leadership means that we have participation for everyone. And some people might now claim, well, does everyone really mean absolutely anybody, or is it a closed circle? I received quite a number of emails in reaction to my last podcast where people were very unsure and just wondered how much participation is okay and where do I draw the line where I say, okay, look, this is for you and this is not for you. So our topic for today in the next 15 minutes is participation. And of course I have to distinguish, because it is a complex question, how participation should work. When you look at the cases we had recently where we had anti-corona countermeasures protests with people not wearing a mask and not keeping social distancing, or afterwards they are completely fact-free and they said, oh, we had millions of people on the street, while realistically they just had a couple of thousand. It's just the urge to speak up and to appear relevant. That is not participation. So when you think that just because you have a right to free speech, no question about that. That is a very important right, and this is not limited at all. But when you think that your right to free speech means that you can just walk into a boardroom meeting and you have the right to be heard, this is not how it works. This is not how an organization works, and this is not how you sustainably run any kind of business. On the other hand, we have to draw a very clear line of what we do not need in the corporate world, which unfortunately we often see. So one aspect of what we do not need is a culture of non-participation or even punishment of people who want to participate. I'll just give you an example from my own experience, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting in the lecture hall. I was sitting in the room with a professor, and he was reading out. I started studying English and French, later switched to English and history because studying French didn't work too well for me. But I had some lectures about linguistics, and they were highly interesting, very competent professor, no question about that. But I remember that a student raised her hand, and then, of course, the professor said, okay, what's your question? And she said, I just read the script you gave us. What are liquid sounds? And the professor said, oh, liquid sounds, very important. There are a couple of people who published about liquid sounds, named a couple of books, and then said, so why not next week you just come here in front of the whole group and give like a short 7-minute presentation, 7 to 10 minutes, about what liquid sounds are. And from that moment on, no one ever asked the question again. Because, of course, when people participate, you can ask them to take a share of a task. Or some people even want to volunteer and do the task. But when someone openly says, I have no idea about this concept, what is this concept? And your answer is, this concept is now your accountability or your responsibility, no one is ever going to volunteer again. So it's very important, never punish the people who want to participate just because they don't know something. When you can explain it to them just because they had a question. It simply means they want to know what's going on. Of course, we also do not need pseudo-elitist behavior. So when you think that you can either talk down on people or they have no right to participate because they don't have that university degree or whatever else, I can tell you one example. There was one leader who told the people in the logistics department that they don't have to understand everything. They need to pack stuff and send it out. And you might know that sometimes you have people in your organization who behave a bit like they own the organization, although they don't. But when you walk to them and you talk to them, they always know everything. And it feels a bit like they should be on board level, but people didn't perceive how genius they are. And of course, some of these people are problematic. And I know that. Nevertheless, as a leader, you have to face the fact it's called opinion leadership for a reason. These people are able to bring every single person working in their department behind their own opinion and have a go against you. So when you think that your elitist behavior leads to anything, when you think, oh, I have a certain level in the hierarchy, so you can't talk to me directly, talk to someone else, or you say, I have that kind of degree, so you better shut up, that does not work. Because the times where leadership is founded on hierarchical levels, this time is really over. Leadership today, and especially very good leadership, is based on social acceptance and mastering how opinion leadership works. You need to win the people on a social level, not on a formal level. So when you come across with either academic arrogance or your title on a business card, welcome to 2020, your approach is not going to work. So stop having this pseudo-elitist behavior. And of course, if you just like to hear yourself talking, you present yourself, or you want to be the hero of the company, some, especially board level people, have the urge to be in the center of attention and be the bit of ego kind of leader, often very eccentric. And then people often refer to Steve Jobs and they give like one or two examples. And then they say, oh, Steve Jobs or Tony Stark. These are people who are very successful. So first, Steve Jobs, you take one example out of millions of people and you say that the exception becomes the rule. So that is not only very unscientific, it also has no proof or evidence. Second, when you quote Tony Stark, that's a fictional Marvel character. Just because you like someone who turns into Iron Man when he wants to doesn't mean that in reality it only works remotely the same. So just some examples from organizations how things can go right or go wrong. Sometimes you have a project, just to give you the first example, and the project is not going well. And then people say, well, I told you before. I told you so. Or people say, well, I don't want to say I told you so, but I informed you thusly, which is basically the same, and it's also a borrowed/a stolen line from Dr. Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory. So when a project doesn't go well, the first thing you have to do is to address that it's not going well. But when people say, I told you so, there are two kinds of people. First, someone who's clueless, can't participate, but they like to hear themselves talking. These are people who are not useful. But there are people who say, I told you so, here's the problem, that's my suggestion. And these are the people you need to talk to. I know it can be difficult to say I am wrong, and especially when someone who might be a competitor within your own organization or someone who wants to get on a higher level, wants to get a promotion, but you don't like the person personally, that has to stand behind right here. When someone is helpful, you have to get that person into participation. So, but when of course you have someone, and that is of course the so-called non-volunteering personality, people who only criticize but never volunteer to do anything, these are of course people who are not helpful. I criticized people in the past, but I also always offered help. In certain associations, I offered help. When I volunteered to do the help, they just set boundaries where they said, okay, that is not going to happen, where I told them, look, these are existential parts to change the association. They said no, then of course you can leave, or these people can leave when you don't get any kind of help. But the culture of non-volunteering, if someone only says it's all wrong but never gives an idea how to do it better, also not helpful. And the third example from organizations is a seniority principle, so principle of seniority, or a hierarchical concept when it's not appropriate. I'll just give you an example. Let's take Lufthansa, airline company. They have seniority principle of seniority. So the more senior you are, the more you have to say when you're in the cockpit. And as a passenger, I feel incredibly happy that they have it. So when I see that there's a thunderstorm coming up, so it's going to be a really difficult landing, I am very happy that without further ado, the more senior pilot can take over and say, I'm going to bring this plane down properly and land it at the airport so it works. And not the person who has 15 landings says, hey, can I just go for this task because I will grow when I get harder tasks? Well, maybe don't try on that level when you are very inexperienced. So when a principle of seniority or hierarchy makes sense, people will accept it. But some people are just completely arbitrary. Some people say, how long are you here? Oh, only 2 years? Listen a bit more before you speak up. Or people say, where do you work here? Oh, you're an assistant. Look, I'm senior sales here. Maybe as an assistant, you just don't comment on what I do. That, of course, is completely arbitrary. And of course, this will lead to people being frustrated, lower motivation, and that normally leads and often leads to higher employee turnover, and the costs go up, the productivity goes down. So now we have to know how to do it better. And there are 3 aspects I want to give you as a suggestion here, as an advice, how you can make participation better in your organization. So step number 1, offer forums. A forum is a place which happens in a certain frequency, so let's say once a month or once every 2 months, or the minimum is once a quarter, where people can present ideas how to do things better, or they present what they've learned from things going wrong in the past. Very important here is that you need to promote it within your organization. You must allow people to take their time to go there, so don't do it Wednesday, 7 p.m. outside working hours and then tell them, oh, it's an investment. Just stop that nonsense. So do it during proper working hours. And then very important is that you have management commitment. So from every management level, at least one person has to go there, because otherwise it's going to be nothing else than an incestuous meeting of just one department talking to each other, basically having the same discussion they had before. So it is very important that you have a management commitment where you say one person from every hierarchical level is going to participate. Management commitment. So second, give regular feedback to your people. And very important now is because some people say, oh, we do that. Great. Well, let's just say it is not too helpful when you say, I want to do that, and then I choose the means of the email. And I mean, these kind of management emails sent out to absolutely everyone, 4 pages long, talking about absolutely everything. That is not how to give proper feedback. Proper feedback either can be done directly, which is a lot of work, of course, or you can do it indirectly, which means you, for example, as someone from board level, talk to senior management talk to their people, and then talk to junior management, they talk to mid-management, and then go down the hierarchical chain, because in every department they will have their own language, their own focus, their own ideas, and also their own priorities, also their own choice of language. The typical standardized CEO video, which is just sent out, bores people to death because it is so bland. It is so neutral, because the legal department looks over it, and then of course the compliance department looks over it, and it's such a neutral statement of always the same to, oh, we value our people, the human being is in the center of our attention, the client is of course our number one priority, we want to make you happy, deliver great service. People know all these phrases. Giving actual feedback has 2 components. One is proactive, which means you have to give regular updates, either directly or indirectly, as I just described, or reactive. Reactive is needed when something happens. So when people say, hey, we just see in press that one of our products is really problematic and it causes major disruptions on the client side, what do? You have to reactively say, hey, we're on it, our department is checking it, the legal team is on it, and of course we have product developers taking care of that. So people know something is happening and they know this is what I can tell to the client right now. Aspect number 3 is do individual support, which for example can mean seminars or coaching, but also do events. And events are tremendously important. And not only talking about factual stuff and getting speeches from experts, that is important, no question about that, but also have an informal part. And I know that these informal parts get cut down more and more every year. Some of them for the right reason. I mean, when we just look into the recent past and we had certain, let's say, insurance companies where these informal events became, let's just put it in polite words, very unacceptable how the money was spent and on what it was spent. But you can have fun in a reasonable way. And of course, and that's the most important part, people are able to network. When you are, and this kind of network is a very active way to get feedback, and it also drives participation and motivation. People can talk to each other and see where are things going without the filter of having senior level management sitting in the same room, or the filter of I can't say that because the legal department is in the room or the compliance department is in the room, or. So here we are, people who are able to speak openly. So 3 aspects you have to do: offer forums, then give regular feedback proactively and reactively if needed, and then do individual support, for example, coachings and seminars, and run events. And these events also must have an informal part. So when you now have any additional question, when you now have any additional aspects where you say, I like to talk about this or that, or maybe we are planning something in that area, just let me know, drop me an email. The email is in the show notes of this podcast. And of course, feel free to contact me anytime. For now, very important, take your notes from this podcast and put things into action. And I wish you all the best implementing this in your organization. And for today, there's only one thing left to say for me. Thank you very much for your time.